With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
It's Irish. It is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No,
Okay.
We Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
Direct from the King Spring Studios in beautiful Smyrna, Georgia. This is a bunch of malarkey. Now, here's your host, the incredible Charlie McMahon.
Thank you to the legendary Scott Shannon for that wonderful introduction, and thanks to all of you for tuning in to yet another episode of A Bunch of Malarkey as we cruise to the midway point of October. Halloween on the horizon. Halloween cheer has kind of been full swing, folks. You see everybody out and about, candy everywhere, costumes. Of course, you got Christmas in the background, looming, lurking, waiting to take over. But we are in the grips of fall and Halloween season. And it's finally cooled down here in Metro Atlanta, so I don't have to bitch about the heat anymore. But hopefully for the rest of the year, you'll hear me bitch about it again sometime in March, I'm sure. So here we are, making our way through mid-October. Baseball playoffs, we're in the championship series round. My Yankees still alive and well. We'll see how this series with Houston plays out. And we got the Braves and Dodgers, the two best teams in the National League, knocked out last week. Now, I feel bad for the people here in the Atlanta metro area. Every year they get their hopes up, whether it be a college team, a pro team, and every year they are left waiting at the altar, so to speak. I'm sorry, folks, but you know what it is? It's like they almost accept mediocrity. Not so much the fans. It's the organizations. You know, in big markets, New York, Chicago, Boston, a manager blows a big series, they get fired. In these smaller market teams, they get free pass after free pass after free pass. So what are you going to do? But it is fall, and it's a real enjoyable time of the year. Now, as you know, I like to tell a lot of, I guess you could say neighbor. I don't know these people personally, but they're in this subdivision of mine with 225 homes. Corey and I have spoke in detail about it in previous episodes. But I love following this Facebook page. Every neighborhood has one now, a Facebook page where people, it's supposed to be for informing people about things and selling things and all recommendations for contractors and painter. You know the deal, folks. You have one. But mine seems to be like the Young and the Restless or Days of Our Lives. And Corey and I spoke about this back earlier in the year. The other day, great story. Someone in the neighborhood took their boxes that they received. They got a shipment in big boxes, big cardboard boxes. Now, the easy thing to do is take the styrofoam out of it, break it down, fold it up, and put it out on Friday for the recycling guy. No matter how big the box is, as long as all the styrofoam's taken out and you break it down, you put it out, they never have a problem taking it. Well, this Yahoo decides he or she is going to just take the box with all the styrofoam, or the boxes, I should say, and dump them at our clubhouse by the dumpster. Not in the dumpster, right outside where the garbage pails are. I don't think we even have a dumpster. It's just the garbage pails over there. So they didn't break it down. They just dumped it in the parking lot. So one neighbor snaps a picture of it and says, "Oh, what a shame." And then as you zoom in on the picture, you see that there's still a shipping label on it. These idiots weren't even smart enough to take the shipping label off of it with their name and everything on it. So one neighbor decides, "Oh, I see the shipping label on it in the picture. I'm going to go down there and investigate." So she really must have nothing to do all day. Gets in a car and drives down to the clubhouse and does an investigation and comes back onto Facebook and says, "Oh, it was one of my neighbors. I cleaned it up and took care of it." And, pretty much end the story. Now, if you're going to drive all the way down to the clubhouse and clean up, which was very nice of her to do, aren't you going to out or public shame the neighbor that did that? Why do that? Go through all that trouble. And what lesson is learned there if the person isn't shamed? I would have shamed this person to the end of it. First of all, I wouldn't get in my car and go down there and, there's better things to do throughout the course of the day, like talk shit about people on a podcast. But that's another whole story. I wouldn't go down there, first of all. But if I did, and I saw the person's name, I would totally shame them. What's the point of going down there if you're not going to shame? I'm all for shame. You should shame people when they do wrong. How are they going to learn? So I don't know if she spoke to these people privately or whatever, but this is what we're dealing with, folks. This is what social media and these neighborhoods, they're supposed to be for the betterment of the neighborhood and for information and referrals, and this is what we're dealing with, the minutia each day on this web page, on this Facebook page. So, again, if you're going to call someone out and make a big deal out of something, at least shame them. Yeah, that's all I have to say, shame them. So fall is here, and it's a perfect time. I used to love when I DJ doing weddings in the fall. There's nothing like a fall wedding. Leaves changing color, crisp air, just a great feel in the air. Now, I read this story, which I found hard to believe. I'm going to just summarize it for you. So 2 days before this wedding that was supposed to take place in Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, the wedding party, including the bride and groom, went out on looked like a paddleboarding trip down the Delaware River. When they returned to their hotel after this paddleboarding excursion, the bride-to-be said to the groom-to-be, my friend, which is one of the bridesmaids, is too drunk to keep her balance on the paddleboard or whatever. Could you walk her to her hotel room? So the groom-to-be not only walked her down the hallway, but she was struggling to stay upright. She was clearly intoxicated. He pulled the bridesmaid, the woman, into the men's locker room and assaulted her, groped her, bit her, and removed her bikini bottoms. The bride walks in on this. So basically, the bride and groom have a little spat over this. But she went on to marry the guy 2 days later, despite catching him sexually assaulting her bridesmaid. So the bridesmaid ends up going to the police. This guy gets arrested and for sexual assault. And, there's a whole court case going on now. But, folks, if you're going to marry this guy, you're not even married to him yet. You're letting sexual assault be like, okay, it's no problem. What is that marriage going to be like? He's going to commit murder and you're just going to let it go? I mean, how do you marry a guy it's not even like an accusation where he could say, oh, I didn't do it. And, it's he said, she said. She walked in on the guy sexually assaulting her bridesmaid in the locker room and gives the guy a free pass and marries him anyway. This world is totally crazy. I couldn't believe that story. I don't know if you guys saw it on the news or read it, but it's really, really crazy that somebody would give their future husband that much of a pass when you walk in and catch the guy doing this. It's incredible to me. So, folks, that'll transition perfectly to our favorite segment.
A bunch of malarkey. Mutant of the Week. Now here's Charlie.
So last week, in a battle of costume crimes, the Stranger Danger Ranger, the man who went into an apartment complex naked, wearing only a red Power Rangers mask and exposing himself to a 15-year-old girl, he beat the Sharktato, the man in a shark costume at a McDonald's who shoved an employee and demanded potatoes and banged on the door. It was a pretty close race, 60 to 40%. So the Stranger Danger Ranger wears our Mutant of the Week crown based on your vote. So thank you very much for voting. If you don't know how to vote or where to vote, go to our Facebook page, A Bunch of Malarkey. Polls for the Mutant of the Week go up very early Tuesday morning and run through Saturday. So let's go to this week's nominees. We're going to Florida, first of all. It might not be the worst idea, but it's definitely up there, folks. A woman who was caught shoplifting from a Florida Big Lots store last week tried to hide from police by climbing into the ceiling, where she led cops on a bizarre hours-long chase that forced the business to temporarily shut down, the authorities said. Staff at the Big Lots in Port Charlotte told police the suspect, identified as 37-year-old Christina Perkins, had been in the store for hours on Thursday evening before going into the bathroom with a shopping cart full of merchandise. Police said a manager tried to get into the restroom, but the woman had barricaded the door with garbage cans. when the deputies arrived, they immediately noticed several tiles missing from the ceiling, while Perkins was nowhere to be found, the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office said in a news release. Deputies began removing additional tiles and eventually saw Perkins, who disregarded their commands and continued to crawl to other parts of the ceiling, according to the news release. Police said they requested assistance from medical personnel and firefighters who brought ladders with them, but authorities had to suspend the search and evacuate the store because of the danger the woman posed to herself and to others. Finally, at 1:40 a.m. Friday, more than 6 hours after police first arrived at the Big Lots, the suspect climbed down and was taken into custody. She was charged with criminal mischief, petty theft, possession of drug paraphernalia, resisting law enforcement, and resisting a merchant. Police said the drug charge stems from 3 syringes they found in her purse, along with a spoon with white residue that tested positive for morphine. Big Lots reported significant damage to the ceiling and drywall and had to be temporarily closed for repairs, according to the sheriff's office. So let's call her, out of Florida, the Big Lots Looney. The Big Lots Looney. I like Big Lots. I like going there for holiday stuff and looking around, but never suspect a woman crawling through the ceiling tiles. So coming out of Florida, the Big Lots Looney is our first mutant nominee. And our second mutant nominee, we have to go to Texas. So it's Florida versus Texas. In sickness and in health, and hopefully from behind bars. So we got another wedding type story. A Texas man was arrested last Friday after he robbed a local bank a day before his wedding in order to pay for the ring and his venue, police said. Heath Edwards Bumpus was charged with aggravated robbery after he told a teller at a Citizen State Bank in Groveton that he had a weapon and he requested the cash out of the till. He basically stated that he was getting married tomorrow, so he didn't have enough money for a wedding ring, and that he wanted to buy, and that he needed to pay the wedding venue. Sheriff Woody Wallace said in a video posted online. Photos of the suspect were posted on the Trinity County Sheriff's Facebook page, and an unlikely person came forward with Bumpus's identity. His fiancée, who he was supposed to marry tomorrow, was able to get in touch with him on the phone when she saw our Facebook post, Wallace said. She knew it was him. She contacted him and asked him if he robbed the bank. She convinced him that she knew it was him. His picture was all over Facebook and the news, and he needed to turn himself in. Bumpus did just that and turned himself in to the Houston County Courthouse. Most of the money was recovered, Wallace said. So let's call him the prenuptial nincompoop, coming out of Texas. So we got 2 pretty good ones this week. We've got the Big Lots Looney, the woman climbing through the ceiling of a Big Lots to avoid a shoplifting charge, and the prenuptial nincompoop, the man who robbed the bank the day before his wedding to pay for the ring and for the wedding venue. So, folks, make your voices heard. Polls go up on Tuesday morning and on Saturday. 5 full days to vote. And thank you for those of you who religiously vote every week. I see you out there, and I thank you very much. Before we get into this week's topic, we had a lot of feedback last week on the shopping cart caper. People love these calls. I had comments and emails and messages and private messages. So I love the feedback, folks. You guys seem to really love the calls. So we're working on another episode with some phone calls for the end of the month. I started working on those the other day, so we'll have those for you the final Monday of the month. Want to get in touch with us? Have an idea for a show topic? It's easy, folks. You can catch us through our Facebook page, either in through the comments, or you can private message us. You can email us at abunchofmalarkeypodshow@gmail.com. That's abunchofmalarkeypodshow@gmail.com. Or if you want to give us a call and leave us a voicemail, again, we don't have a 24-hour answering center. It's just a voicemail. You can leave a voicemail. You don't have to leave your number, or you can block your number if you don't want a number coming up on the caller ID. That number is area code 406-8212, 706-406-8212. Give us a call if you have an idea for a topic, or if you want to be a guest on the show, either by phone or in person. If you want to donate to the show, become a patron or a sponsor of the show, go to Patreon, patreon.com/abunchofmalarkey. Make a monthly donation, $1, $2, $3, whatever you can afford, and you'll have access to more content. We're going to be doing extra calls and posting them on the Patreon site, and bonus episodes. And once we start getting, we have a few patrons, but once we start getting a bunch more, we'll start doing some extra content that will be exclusive only to patrons and sponsors. And if you want to tell a friend about the show and where we're found, we are found on all major podcast platforms, which include iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, Radio.com, Stitcher, CastBox, YouTube. And if you have one of those Echo devices, just say, Alexa, play the podcast A Bunch of Malarkey, and she will play the most recent episode. So, this week's episode was kind of inspired by my father-in-law, Paul, who's been on the show. He sent me a video the other day, which I had seen on TV. It's a commercial for Geico, where they have a kind of like a horror movie scene with characters, and they're trying to get away from the chainsaw killer. And instead of doing the obvious things that would be any logical person would do to get away from the killer, they make all the wrong decisions, like, let's go hide in the attic, let's go hide in the basement. No, we're not going to get into that running car. We're going to go hide behind the chainsaws. And then you see the chainsaw killer just shaking his head in disgust, like, these people are so stupid. And then we hear at the end, let's run to the cemetery. So my father-in-law thought it was a funny commercial. I think it's humorous, and I had seen it, but it didn't stand out until he sent it to me. And that made me think of a great topic with Halloween on the horizon, which is all these horror movie cliches. Now, we've seen tons of horror movies in our lives, I'm sure, folks. I know my wife doesn't like them. She doesn't like to watch them, but I'm sure she's seen a few. My father-in-law is obsessed with horror movies. He loves them. My mother-in-law says there's screaming all day going on in the house from the TV. He's got these stereo speakers and full blast blood-curdling screams, and sometimes she makes him put on these headphones so he doesn't disturb the whole house. And I watch them. I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but I've seen my fair share over the years. And you get frustrated with the decisions that the characters make and the same cliches in every single I wouldn't say every single, but many of the horror movies. So with Halloween just around the corner, folks, many of us are preparing to binge watch horror movies if you haven't done so already. Good scary films can set a perfect Halloween mood by making us shiver with fear and suspense. However, there are so many films that leave us just plain confused rather than scared. This is usually because they are either ridiculously predictable, or they just don't make sense. We here at A Bunch of Malarkey are here to discuss the most annoying horror movie cliches, the ones that almost ruin, well, they actually do ruin, not almost, they ruin these films. Well, we're not saying that all horror movies are guilty of these cliches, but you'll definitely be able to recognize and relate to quite a few. So let's get started here. You gotta love the one where someone's being chased by a car and they're running on a road, and first of all, the car never gets up to them. Somehow they're running fast enough to evade the car, but they never get out of the road. You never noticed that? Like, it's comedy gold. If you were being chased by a car, wouldn't your survival instincts tell you to run somewhere where the car can't get you, like into the woods where the car would hit trees, where it can't fit between trees? Well, not if you're a horror movie character, folks. It's just way too common for the character to run on the road in front of the car while being chased. You're not even zigzagging. They're not doing anything. They're just running on the road, and it's forever. It takes forever for the car to catch them. I mean, seriously, folks, unless they're the guy who broke the marathon record the other day, under 2 hours, you're not going to outrun a car. So you have to use some sort of instincts to get away from the car, but that never seems to click in the brains of many of these characters. So that's one. That's comedy gold. That's a pretty common one. What about the women they portray in horror movies that can't run without falling down? Now, I know a lot of women runners over the years. I've run with them in different running groups. I know a lot of different women runners, and they're very athletic and can outrun a lot of men. But women in horror movies, for some reason, have to fall down. They can't run 20 yards without falling down while being chased by the killer. And they have to slam the entire weight of their body to the ground, and that's when the killer always gets them. And they're always wearing these heels that they can't run in. They don't know enough to kick the heels off and run barefoot or whatever they're wearing under the... It's always they got to try and run in the heels. They're falling down every 50 yards. It's that stereotype. It's that cliche. Come on, folks. We can do better than this. So those are two right off the top that annoy me. What about when you're trying to get away... They're trying to get away from the killer, right? And the car never starts. The car never starts. It was perfectly fine when they got to wherever they were going, where the killer is. Drove like a dream, this thing. Brand new car. It doesn't matter what model car is in the movie. You notice that? It could be an old beat-up bomb. It could be a brand new Jeep. It could be anything. The car suddenly decides it's not going to work. Now, I've had a driver's license now for 30 years. Groundhog Day 89, I got my driver's license. That was 30 and a half years ago. I can count on one hand the number of times my car didn't start. And all of which were because of a dead battery. The battery died in the winter or whatever. So how is this so common in all these movies? Now, I understand sometimes the killer tampers with the shit under the hood. It happens. But 9 times out of 10, they just get in the car and the car doesn't start. For whatever reason, or it takes 10 minutes for it to finally... It gives the killer just enough time to get to the door of the car, and then all of a sudden the car turns over. I mean, come on, folks. We could do better than this. The car's working perfectly 10 minutes ago, but now that the murderer is after you, it decides it's not going to start. Here's another one. There's always like a group of young people going up to the cabin for a nice weekend. There's 6, 8 people, always in a group. But when shit goes down, they all decide they're going to split up. Now, you got this killer with superhuman strength, and instead of banding together 6 or 8 against 1, let's split up. That's always the best strategy, right? Split up so he can knock us off one by one instead of us as a group attacking him. You know, they always say if you get lost in the desert with a group of people, like say you're on a trip and it breaks down, the best thing you can do is stay with as many people as possible to increase your chances of survival. And that would hold true, you would think, against a murderer or a creature or something of that. But what they always do, let's split up. You go with him, I'll go with her, and we'll never see each other again. So it's the let's split up decision that I don't think it's ever worked out in a horror movie, where the let's split up thing. Maybe in Scooby-Doo, when they used to split up. The Scooby-Doo crew used to split up, and they never failed. None of them ever died. But in horror movies, for some reason, the let's split up decision never seems to work out. And now, speaking of this superhuman strength, the killer in all these movies always has this superhuman strength. He's so skilled at killing that they make every character drop like a fly until they encounter the main protagonist. Then all of a sudden, the killer becomes weaker and clumsier and gives an unfair advantage to the hero of the movie. So he's knocking people off left and right, superhuman, and then when the one last guy who they want to survive in the movie always somehow is able to overcome that superhuman strength, and the killer suddenly gets sloppy and clumsy and weak. It's been done a million times. What about the adults are useless cliche? In horror movies that revolve around teenagers or younger children, getting help from responsible adults is near impossible. They usually never believe or listen when the children try to tell them about the crazy things that are happening. Adults don't have time for these murderous shenanigans, folks. Parents just don't understand. That was a song by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince about 31 years ago. So no matter how crazy or odd the behavior of their children become, these horror parents just refuse to give a shit. They say or do nothing about it. In severe cases, the statement he or she must be on drugs is often spoken in the movie. Now, I can see the same thing happening when I was a kid. It's not just today's parents. If I came to my mom and told her there was a ghost in my room or something was haunting me, she would say, what's a ghost? You think you kids have it bad? When I was a kid, we dealt with 100 ghosts. It would always, you don't have to one-up you. So I could see in the movies, it's a big cliche that gets tired, but I understand it in a way, because my parents would have said, especially my mom, you're full of shit. Ghost. What ghost? Or, you think you had it bad? What's a little ghost in your life? You should have seen what we had to deal with as kids. She would have one-upped me, so I would have been dead by a murderer or a ghost at a young age. So I can relate to that one. What about the people who they're hiding from the killer? They get away. They're hiding in the dark room behind a desk, and they're always betrayed by that one little sound. No matter how good the victim is at hiding or how good their hiding spot is, there's going to be a sound that will give away their location. They're going to sneeze, they're going to whimper, or if they have a baby, the baby's going to cry. We've seen way too many of these scenes of a victim hiding in a closet or under the bed and their phone ringing or helping the killer find their victim. So that's been done to death too. So we're moving along on these cliches. So which ones have you been able to relate to? Probably all of them so far. How about the speed walking killer? No matter how fast the victim or the potential victim is, the killer never runs. He's always speed walking. He could be crippled, missing a leg, but he can walk fast instead of running, because he will always be faster than a victim sprinting in terror. Even Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt comes out, Michael Myers is catching him, walking, limping after him. It's always the speed walking killer who always catches you because you're falling down. How about the mirror scare, folks? This is something I think about a lot, even when I'm in the bathroom. Like, every time I look in the mirror, I'm thinking like a entity is going to be behind me, because these movies have you so programmed. It seems like the filmmakers just cannot resist the mirror cliche. Every time there's a mirror in a movie, you know what's going to happen. When the character looks at it, they will suddenly see a reflection of a monster, a ghost, or a killer standing behind them, or the writing and the condensation after a shower, like, I'm here, or I'll get you. Now, don't these people have fans in their bathroom to eliminate that condensation on the mirrors? Because I don't know, folks. I have fans in my bathroom, and I have had for a long time, and I don't get that condensation on the mirrors. Every movie, they don't have a bathroom fan for some reason. Just thought a little observation I made, that it happens in the mirror, but they all have this condensation on the mirror. Where are these bathroom fans? Every house in these murder movies don't have a bathroom fan? Just saying, folks. Might want to install one. Or what about the bad cell phone reception? At some point, scriptwriters probably realized that it's quite unconvincing and a stretch for a character to not have a cell phone in modern horror movies when they need to call for help. So they figured out a solution: bad reception. The cabin in the woods. Now, we've been to cabins in the woods. I get reception. Maybe not great reception, but I can make a call. Or when disaster strikes, the phone is useless because it has 1% battery, and as soon as they dial the police and get the first word, the battery runs out. These people aren't carrying chargers with them, battery packs, whatever. So it's, we've come a long way where people can, they don't have the landline. In the old movies, they used to cut the landline all the time. The killer would always cut the landline outside, and they would press the thing, the phone's dead. Now we have cell phones, so we don't have to worry about that. But of course, we never get reception when we're being stalked by a killer, or our battery's always at 1%, just as we are about to be stabbed to death. So the bad cell phone or the dead battery cliche is alive and well in these Halloween or horror movies. Doesn't even have to be Halloween. What about the dark basement? Now, we have a basement. It's very bright, very airy, really nice basement. And I've lived in basement apartments in New York before I owned a home, before I got married. Always bright and airy. Where are these? I think one time in my life, the house I initially grew up in was a dark, cobwebby, weird kind of basement. But in every horror movie, they have a dark basement. If the horror movie character buys a house, there's definitely going to be a creepy basement where someone was murdered or will be murdered, even them. Not to mention that the owners always feel the need to inspect the weird noises coming from it when they are alone. Also, that dim light bulb that hangs in the basement. They never have a light fixture down there. It's always this light bulb on a rope. And it's always like a bulb from the 70s that pops and blows out. No LED lights in these modern movies. No newer light bulbs. It's always those old light bulbs on a rope with no light fixture that just pops as soon as they go down there. And then they get killed. So, I mean, come on. It's been done to death. We got to start thinking of better ideas for these horror films, folks. What about, we talked about the kids giving you warning that something was happening. What about the old wise person in the movie? There's always an old wise person in some of these movies, whether it be a neighbor. We don't expect the main character to pack their bags and leave when some old person in the neighborhood warns them about crazy stuff going on in a house that they just bought. But some consideration would make this scenario a little bit more believable and less of a cliche. Old people usually don't just walk around warning people of danger for no good reason. So, in life, folks, if you move into a house and the old neighbor comes by and tells you all horror stories about the house you just bought, may want to think about moving. Or better yet, before you buy the house, why don't you go knock on the doors, find the oldest person in the neighborhood, and find out about that house. Because in these murder movies, these horror movies, the old guy or the old woman always seems to know what's going down in the neighborhood. What about the final girl they keep alive in the movie? There's always the final girl or the final guy. The final girl trope is prevalent in slasher horror movies when only one girl out of a group of people survives. The final girl is often portrayed as a shy, innocent person in the beginning, but once as the hell is unleashed, she turns out to be the most resourceful and intelligent character of them all. Wow, she becomes MacGyver all of a sudden in the flick. The female has exhibited nothing but Paris Hilton level intelligence throughout the entire movie. Then she becomes MacGyver. Once she's the only survivor left, she discovers the brains to build an incredibly clever, ingenious, and lethal trap or weapon out of nothing but a rubber band, a shoelace, and a half-eaten hamburger. I mean, all of a sudden she becomes Richard Dean Anderson. She's an idiot the whole movie. She's the only one left. She's building shit. So another cliche that needs to stop in these movies. We kind of touched on it with the superhuman strength, but the killer is always invincible, folks. You can shoot them, burn them, they're immortal. The killer or this monster makes everyone drop like flies, but easily recovers from any hit he takes. And when the hero finally knocks down the bad guy, 10 minutes later, he's alive and ready to hunt down the rest of his unsuspecting victims. You've seen it with Michael Myers. Shot, burned, stabbed, keeps coming back. So, I mean, enough's enough. And they never finish him off. You notice that? They finally manage to knock out the attacker in the movie, but they don't outright kill him right there when he's incapacitated. They don't deliver the final blow. Like Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and all the others. They'll go through the trouble of knocking him out, but they never finish him off. They'll sit around and let go of their gun or knife or check his pulse, and then the monster or the killer always comes back to life for that one final 5 or 10 minute scene, last battle. It's been done to death. What about the everyone is an idiot in the movie cliche? One thing's clear, folks. When a murderous psycho is breathing down your neck, only basic survival skills can save your life. But if you're in a horror movie and you're a character, chances are you're a dummy who keeps making one stupid decision after another until you get bludgeoned to death. The protagonist making absurd, life-threatening decisions is one of the most prevalent horror movie cliches, and that's what we talked about in the Geico commercial. It's just stupid decision after stupid decision after stupid decision. What about everyone as a sniper? Everyone becomes a sniper in the movie, like the people being chased. Once guns appear in a horror movie, despite never firing a gun before, every character becomes an expert sharpshooter. Damn right I'm a sharpshooter. Something about zombies just give everyone an amazing trigger finger. They can shoot zombies from miles away. Our people can range from an ex-military guy who has fired many weapons in his life to a ditzy, clueless blonde, a nerdy little teenager, or some fat slob, yet they are all equally gifted with a gun in their hand. It also doesn't matter the type of gun. It could be a handgun, it could be a machine gun, a shotgun, or a sniper rifle. The characters will always find it in themselves, not only to shoot the zombie, but also to make sure it's a headshot. Pretty fucking good considering you have never shot a gun before or been this scared in your life. Like, your hands are shaking, but they're precise. They're always a sharpshooter. So that's another cliche. And they always preface it like, oh, I've never fired a gun before. And then they become, like a special ops guy, sniper. Now, this is becoming less, but it's still pretty prevalent, and it has been a while. The black guy always dies. Cliche. You know who definitely has no chance of survival in a typical cliche-ridden horror movie plot. The black guy, or the black woman for that matter. However, this cliche is beginning to die out as studios begin to realize that the main protagonist doesn't always have to be white. Oh, poor black people in these movies. Always getting killed first. We're never making it to the end. So that's starting to change, which is good. What about dropping the keys? You got so many clumsy horror movie characters. They're always dropping the keys when they're trying to run away from a killer. It does make you frantic, fear. But the number of scenes of characters dropping their keys while trying to unlock the door, it's incredible, and it's been done to death. What about the same creepy locations these movies are filmed in? If you're a big horror fan, movie fan, you've probably seen way too many movies in abandoned houses, creepy orphanages, mental institutions, basements, caves, and so on. Despite the fact that in our minds these places are frightening, it's getting a bit repetitive now, isn't it? So that's a cliche. These same creepy mental institutions and abandoned houses and murder in the shower, folks. Murder in the shower. I mean, I guess it started back in the day with Psycho, but not many people expect to be murdered in the bathroom. Well, maybe, except those who watch a lot of horror movies. If you've seen a handful of them, you know how often killers assault their victims who are taking a shower. You never see murder on a toilet. I think there was one movie where something came up the toilet. The killer did something up the toilet and, killed the guy through his ass. I think I seen that once. But you don't see any murders on the toilet or at the bathroom sink. It's always in the shower for some reason. So that's been done to death now. We're kind of tired of murder in the shower. Always makes me think of that video. I always feel like somebody's watching me by Rockwell. When I'm in the shower, I'm afraid to wash my hair because I might open my eyes and find someone standing there. Remember that song with Michael Jackson in the background? And then we have our stereotype characters. Not every horror movie is guilty of a stereotyped character, but we've seen way too many of these, which are usually there's a slut, a jock, a nerd, a virgin. It's like The Breakfast Club meets Michael Myers all the time. You have all these stereotype people in the movies. What about the police? They're always arriving a few minutes late. They're never arriving as shit's going down or before. They always arrive after all hell is broken loose and everyone's dead. The character, the main protagonist, goes through hell and back trying to get help, and a glimmer of hope appears when they finally call the police. However, the cliche follows, as the police can take ages to arrive, and when they finally do, there's nothing left to save. Or nobody left to save, I should say. Sex in a horror movie will get you killed. You know this already, folks, if you watch these movies. If there's a scene of a couple getting naughty, but one or both are going to die. One's going to die definitely during the act or right after the act. One might get away, usually the woman, and then she will end up dead shortly thereafter. So if you see any hanky-panky going on in one of these horror movies, both of those characters will end up dead at some point. What about they give you that rising tension when nothing's happening? The music, the suspense. Many of these horror movies are guilty of raising the tension when nothing is actually happening. The viewers are often led to believe that the monster is coming closer. But then the protagonist discovers the weird sound they're investigating is just the pet. It's the cat, the dog, always. What about these in-the-dark investigations? The first death in a horror movie often happens when one person in the group gets this excellent idea that they should go out alone in the dark to investigate a suspicious sound they just heard. The person is usually so unbelievably oblivious to the danger that they never take anyone with them. Or not even a weapon of some sort. They just go out with a flashlight, do this investigation on their own. What about the let's hide upstairs cliche? That's probably the worst place you can go, folks. Once you're upstairs, there's no way down except the way you went up. When there's an intruder in your house, the safest option is to run outside and yell for help. But way too often, protagonists or characters are not aware of this option, so when they run out of the living room or the kitchen, they run upstairs and crawl under the bed or jump in a closet. Well, it makes sense for children who don't know any better to do. When you see an adult doing it, you know the scriptwriters did a sloppy, predictable job. And you notice there's never a neighbor within reasonable distance. Everybody knows everybody's business in everybody's neighborhood, right? Until there's a murderer on the loose in these movies or something, then all of a sudden every house is a mile apart. There's no neighbor to run to. Nobody hears anything. Everybody's it's just, no matter how loud you yell, scream, gunshots, all kinds of shit going on next door. Never a neighbor around here. What about the cat scare? Cats are usually gentle and sweet animals unless they're shown in horror movies. Then they are creepy as hell. It usually goes the following way. The character enters a dark room to investigate a strange noise, as they always do, and the viewers prepare themselves for something scary to happen. Then suddenly a cat jumps out of nowhere, angrily hissing for no good reason. These cat scares are so prevalent that when you see a cat in a horror movie, you know what's going to happen sooner or later. Or you get a dog growl. But you notice dogs always end up dead in these movies. They always get off. The killer always stabs and kills the dog. But these cats get away, maybe because they're quicker and smarter. I don't know. Sorry, dogs, but you usually don't make it out of these horror movies either. What about the dream warning cliche? You always have these, the main character of the movie often has a dream or a vision of the stuff that's about to go down. They take it as a warning and desperately try to convince everyone around them, except nobody believes them. So the protagonist is left alone to save all the clueless people around them. So when you see that warning, that dream flash, folks, you know the shit's going down. What about the Indian burial ground cliche? A scenario of a young family moving to a new property without knowing that their house is built on an Indian burial ground. That was a common theme in horror movie history. Gladly, this kind of racist cliche of Native Americans trying to exact revenge on white people by haunting them is less prevalent these days. I kind of just mentioned is screaming in a secluded area. Screaming for help in an area where there are definitely people nearby can be life-saving. But when you're trapped in a secluded area, such as a basement of a house located in the middle of the woods, chances are nobody's going to hear you. So conserving energy for making an escape would be make a lot more sense than yelling frantically. Also, screaming while running with no chance of anyone hearing won't get you very far. But it happens in every horror movie. Another cliche, the creepy hitchhiker. We've seen it a million times. If a character sees someone on a roadside needing help, they are definitely going to help them, no matter how suspicious the stranger looks. However, it always ends badly for them. While this scenario is quite believable and realistic, we've seen it way too many times already. The creepy hitchhiker or car broken down on the side of the road guy. Killers with axes, still pretty prevalent. We have all these modern-day weapons and guns, but the killer with an axe is still pretty prevalent. There are probably a lot better murder weapons than an axe, but many horror movie slashers prefer axes for some reason. There's just something about axes that make every death seem very awful and gory. And who wouldn't? I'd rather be shot than axed to death. If I had a list and you had to number them, axe would be kind of low on the list. Die by axe. I'd rather get shot, to be honest with you. So maybe that's why the axe is so prevalent. Nowadays, these recovered footage horror movies where somebody finds a camera or old VHS tapes. The first few were successful. I guess like the Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, but now they're becoming too prevalent. We've seen way too many movies about recovered scary footage of someone getting murdered or possessed by a demon. It's been done to death already. No more recovered footage movies. What about the ones where the protagonist, the main character, is a ghost? You've definitely seen this on The Sixth Sense. A very disturbed protagonist is worried that their house is being haunted. Then it's revealed that the character is a ghost who is actually haunting somebody else. It was in that other movie there with Nicole Kidman. The name of it escapes me, where they were living in the house and they were the actual ghost. But the biggest one was Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense. And I told you, after I saw that movie, there was a long line outside the theater to see it. It was the hottest movie. I think it was like 1999, somewhere around there. Got in the car with my friends. I said, roll down the window, drive by the line. And I yell out the window, Bruce Willis was a ghost the whole movie. And people were not happy. Then we've got the Bachelorette Horror Edition. Oh, of course, nothing sparks the mood for romance like seeing all of your closest friends and family hacked to little pieces. Somewhere amidst all the blood and guts, our hero or heroine finds the time to make that special connection with that special someone. This guarantees a final scene containing coy looks followed by a long makeout session. And by the way, it's purely coincidence that they are the only two survivors. So there's always that love scene at the end of a lot of these horror movies because they've survived, and suddenly there's a connection. It's like the Bachelorette, Bachelor kind of horror movies. Well, what about the wind? It was the wind cliche. No, it wasn't the wind. That's a great one, though. We usually have two teens equally as dumb. The guy always wants to get it on, but just they're about to have sex, there's a sound. The girl says, "What's that?" Now you figure the first thing that comes to mind for both is, holy shit, that's probably the maniac that was just chasing us with a knife. But no, his response is, it's probably just the wind. But we know, folks, it's never just the wind. What I've learned through these horror movies and this cliche is never ask for any directions. You're better off just driving around looking for where you're going and running out of gas than asking anyone for directions. But if you must ask for directions, don't go to some rundown gas station in the middle of nowhere, some house in the middle of the woods. What you're going to do at that point, by asking directions, is ask some demented backwoods fellas to tell us the best place to go where you can hunt us down one by one and brutally murder us. You might as well just ask them, folks, where can we go where in 24 hours you're going to hunt us down and you're going to kill us? Oh, over there? Okay, thank you so very much. Because that always happens in these movies. A couple more left. There's always a crazy guy in a movie or somebody that they try to make that's like handicapped or some type of learning disability. And he always warns of what's going to happen. Or the crazy guy. And advice is listen to the crazy guy. You and a group of friends, you're going camping or something, and some crazy looking guy says, don't go there, or you don't want to stay there. It's usually a good idea to listen to him. 99.9% of the time, the crazy guy isn't so crazy and knows exactly what he's talking about. So if you're out there and there's somebody a little off telling you not to go there, you may want to listen to him. And finally, the gratuitous shoulder grab. This is where we have two characters, usually a male and a female. The female will already be scared shitless because there is some type of killer monster on the loose, and her friends and family have died right in front of her. Our genius male character figures the best way to get her attention is to silently sneak up behind her and grab her shoulder in a dark room. How about you call her name or even whisper it out? Or at the very least, walk a little heavier so she can hear your damn footsteps coming. That is just one example of the shoulder grab. I'm sure many of you have seen it in other situations also. They just come up and grab and it's you. So those are my horror movie cliches. I'm sure there's some I missed, so be sure in the show comments on the posting on our Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram to come up with some cliches that you have noticed in a lot of horror movies that maybe we didn't cover today. We're always open for discussion. So those are our horror movie cliches. So, folks, make sure you get on Facebook and vote for our Mutant of the Week. We have a pretty good battle this week. It's the Big Lots Looney, the woman hiding in the ceiling tiles of a Big Lots in Florida, versus the prenuptial nincompoop, the man who robbed the bank the day before his wedding so he could pay for the wedding venue and his ring. again, tell everybody about the show. When I post the new show on Facebook, share that post with your friends. Tell them, hey, listen to this. Especially it's a little bit of a Halloween kind of episode, so people are in that mood. Want to talk about some cliches. It's a good conversation starter. Tell them, listen to this, and then discuss some horror movie cliches with your friends. That's how we expand the show. Thank you all for another great week last week. Really, the shopping cart caper episode was really one of our best. Really great listenership numbers. And we owe it all to you folks, because like I always say, we cannot do it without you. So folks, whether you are kicking back, watching a horror movie with your friends or your loved one or just by yourself, you still have to beware. And why is that? Because it's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great week. We will be back next Monday for another brand new episode of A Bunch of Malarkey. Take care, everybody, and we will talk to you on Monday.